Hello, welcome to the Amphi School District Candidate Forum hosted by the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any particular political party or candidate. I am Vivian Hart, a member of the Greater Tucson League of Women Voters, and I'm the moderator for this forum. I do want to let you know that I live in TUSD, so I will not be voting in this race. Before we start, I want to mention how you, our audience members, can ask questions of our candidates. You can submit your questions at any time during the forum. To ask a question, find the Q/A button. What you'll do is move your cursor to the bottom of your screen to bring up the menu, and the QA is on the right side. So click on that icon. And when the QA opens, then type your question directly into the box. And it will automatically send your question to a league member who will collect the questions and communicate them to me, and I will ask them of the candidates. Here are some important facts about the Amphi School District. Approximately 13,500 students go to the schools, and there are 21 schools in the district, 3 high schools, 12 elementary schools, 2 K-8 schools, 3 middle schools, and 1 special education school. The district is economically diverse. There are disadvantaged communities in North Tucson, as well as affluent communities in Oro Valley and Catalina Foothills. The governing board has 5 members, and each member is elected to serve a 4-year term. Every 2 years, either 2 or 3 positions are filled in the general election in November. The requirement is that board candidates must reside within the district boundaries for at least 1 year prior to being elected to the office. Arizona law does not limit the number of terms a member can serve, so they can serve as long as they are elected over and over again. Now I'd like to introduce each of the candidates in the forum and have them give their 2-minute opening statement. I'll start with Scott Baker. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the Amphitheater Governing Board. He is an educator, having taught for over 30 years in a neighboring school district. He helped to develop and implement a revised physical education and health curriculum, and he supports teachers who are new to the profession as a mentor. He's also held and continues to hold numerous leadership roles to benefit students, teachers, and families. Welcome, Scott.
Hello, my name is Scott Baker, and I'm running for re-election to the Amphitheater Governing Board. I'd like to start by saying thank you to Vivian and the League of Women Voters for the honor of allowing me to speak today, and for those of you watching at home. This fall marks the 36th year of my teaching profession, all in the Pima County area. I know what it's like to be directly impacted by the decisions that a school board makes. My interest in educating students and my own personal growth led me to earn my PhD in teaching and teacher education from the University of Arizona. I have a long history in this district. My wife and I met when we were high school students at Amphi. Soon after my oldest child was school age, we moved into the Amphi district so that they would be educated in the Amphi district. 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to give back to the district that had given so much to my children growing up. In the years that I've been on the school board, we've seen significant improvement in our district's letter grades. We've tripled the number of A's. Most of the remaining schools are B's. We have no D's and F's. And obviously, letter grades are not the most significant aspect of a school or a school district, but it is certainly something that taxpayers look at and that gets prominent play in the newspaper. We earn full systems accreditation from Advanced Ed. We are one of a small number of school districts that earned a multi-million-dollar Gear Up grant to support increasing our graduation rate and post-secondary enrollment for disadvantaged students. We have exceeded the state graduation rate, particularly with our disadvantaged students.
Thank you very much, Scott. And next, we will hear from Nathan Davis. Nathan will bring a new voice to the Amphi School Board by combining his passion and his experience as a middle school teacher. Nathan knows the importance of public education to our community and the difficulties facing amphitheater schools. Nathan will bring his commitment for public education to the Amphi School Board. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you very much, Vivian. I am running to be a voice for educators, employees, and the community on the governing board. I'm a third-generation educator. My grandfather was a superintendent in Illinois. My father taught special education at Cholla High School, and I teach middle school social studies in TUSD. Like my father and grandfather before me, I am proud to call myself a public school teacher, and I am proud to call myself a union member. I am the only candidate endorsed by the Pima Area Labor Federation. I was exposed to amazing teachers and educators my whole life, including my 12 years in Amphi schools. After graduating from CDO, I received my bachelor's from the University of Arizona and my master's from the George Washington University. In 2017, I met my amazing wife, who teaches at Pueblo High School. Every teacher makes a positive difference in their students' lives. As teachers, we work to shape the children we educate into successful adults, whatever successful means to each individual student. I am running to support the Amphi family, students, parents, teachers, bus drivers, everyone. I am running to bring transparency to the district and its policies and practices. I am running to ensure that resources are made equitable, where all students at all schools have the resources they need to succeed. My name is Nathan Davis, and I am running to represent our students, our educators, and our community on the Amphitheater School Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. And now DEANNA Day. DEANNA received a BS degree in education from the University of Arizona. Her 15 years as a classroom teacher included teaching reading and language arts in the district. She has coached Odyssey of the Mind, allowing her to network with students, parents, teachers, and administrators in other districts. Welcome, DEANNA.
Hello. Yes, my name is DEANNA Day, and I am running for my third term on the Amphitheater Child-Centered School Board. And I, as Nathan, have a passion for public education. I am also the product of educator parents. And I really just feel very strongly that public education is the key to providing opportunities for our students to cross what many of the divides are that we have within society and within our own district. I am and continue to be an educator. I don't know whether I've hit the 40 years yet or not, but I am an Amphi graduate. My three boys are Dorado graduates, that is CDO, and I'm proud to say that my grandchildren are now Nighthawk graduates. Scott's given you some of the successes that we've had in recent years. I will also say that we would like to continue the improvements in communication and transparency. And I would like people to note that on our website, every financial expenditure of taxpayer money is noted, which is per state law, but still gives everybody that view. We have periodic reviews of all of our systems. And so it's with a debt of gratitude that I serve and would like to continue to serve on the Amphi School Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DEANNA. Now, I do want to tell you that Vicki Cox Golder wanted to be with us today, but she is currently recovering from hip surgery and she couldn't join us. Now it's time to ask questions to the candidates. This is going to be the process for answering the questions. The first candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Then the next 2 candidates will each have 1 minute. Then the first candidate will have 1 minute to respond. I will give the questions in rotating order to the candidates. The first question is, what are your priorities for the district budget? And if the Invest in Ed ballot initiative passes, how will that impact the Amphi School District? We're going to start with Nathan.
I do not have specific priorities for the budget. I do not have that kind of expertise. What I do have, though, are a certain core set of beliefs that I would bring to the board and bring to budget decisions. Primarily, that we need to include all employees and other stakeholders in the process in a genuine, fair way where their voices are heard. Currently, many teachers, other educators, and employees in the district do not feel that they understand how decisions are made in terms of the budget. And this is something that I believe needs to change. As someone who has worked in schools and in other businesses with very good communication, I have seen where it can be incredibly successful. I think this is an issue of communication primarily. Turning to the InvestNet initiative, this was something that I was involved with as a signature collector. Is something that I care deeply about, and something that our educators care deeply about. Once we pass this initiative, which I do believe we will pass, we will need to see where, how much of the money actually shakes out. Currently, it's expected to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, but the actual number is going to be unclear. The law is specific in terms of where percentages of the revenue come from. However, it is not so specific as to say X amount must go to teachers. So there is some discretion with the district once we have this new revenue source in terms of how we spend it in the best way. But again, I will work with our Amphi employees and with my colleagues on the governing board once I am elected to create a budget that has buy-in across our district.
Thank you, Nathan. DeAnna.
Yes, with our budget, and I'm very proud of our budget, and I'm very proud of our financial people who continually are awarded for their integrity and forthrightness with the budget. One of our priorities has always been to put as many dollars into the classroom for our students, because again, it's students first. Again, I agree with Nathan that that's not the expertise of many of us, and to get involved in the too much nitpicking within the budget. With Invest for Ed, I was also a signature gatherer, and I look forward to the passage of that and the dissemination of the money, because the cuts that we have received in recent years have been absolutely intolerable, unfunded mandates and the like. I would also, though, advocate that we continue to lobby our legislators to get a designated funding source for public education, so we don't have to continually go through this process of collecting signatures. Thank you.
And Scott.
With regards to the budget, one of the things that is very important for our school district, and Ms. Day alluded to this, is that we need to have the confidence of our taxpayers, and we do have that confidence. I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to not only pass our continuing override, but we were able to go to the voters and ask for additional funding for a K-3 override and get that passed. One area that I believe that we have fallen short and we need to work on is our classified employees. I think that we have worked hard with some additional money from the 20 by 20, but we've worked hard at raising teacher salaries, but we have people working in our school district that are suffering as hourly employees, and they are not seeing their wages go up in the same way that we've been able to do that for our teachers.
Thank you, Scott. And now, Nathan, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. Mr. Baker mentions the failure of the district to adequately compensate our classified staff. I agree with that, but I do not think it goes far enough. Currently, the district has a salary and wage schedule that is very opaque, that our Amphi employees do not know how they can make more money. I have spoken personally with people with 10+ years experience in the district making less than $13 an hour, and that is unacceptable. All Amphi employees should be making fair salaries and livable wages. In addition, the Invest in Education Act will be a dedicated revenue source. That will be a source that the legislature will not be able to touch. However, the legislature does ultimately control how much extra money we have. I have lobbied state legislatures to get good policies, public education policies passed. As a school board member and as a private citizen, I will continue to do so on behalf of Amphi.
Thank you, Nathan. Now for the next question. Now more than ever, leadership matters. What do you feel is the appropriate role of the governing board and its members? We're going to start with DEANNA.
Well, the governing board, many people believe that we run the district. Actually, we do not run the day-to-day operations of the district. We are in charge of 3 huge areas, which basically I will say cover everything, but you hire the superintendent, you're in charge of the policies and the budget. So ultimately, it's in gaining, making sure that you have confidence in your superintendent and your staff to get the job done. So it's the governing board's role then to put your beliefs and the students and the employees and the community to make sure that we are all representing those in a child-oriented, successful school board. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott.
Thank you. As Ms. Day said, the major roles of the school board are hiring a superintendent and policy decisions, including curriculum and the budget. What I think is most important for a school board member to take into account when making decisions is that the experts in these areas are the people that work for the district. So for example, when teachers and other faculty spend large amounts of time developing curriculum and presenting those ideas to the school board, it is incumbent on the school board to realize that the hard work has been done and the experts have made those decisions and to support those decisions, not to micromanage, essentially. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And now Nathan.
Fundamentally, the governing board is an oversight body. Every 4 years, governing board members are chosen by the voters of the district to represent the community. I believe that the governing board is not adequately providing oversight for the district. I think we see that every 2 weeks when we fail to see questions being asked by governing board members. I think we see that when I speak with community members as well as Amphi employees when they say they've never heard of or from governing board members. I plan to be different than that. I view this as an elected position. It doesn't pay anything. And obviously there won't be any compensation for me. I will treat this very seriously. I will treat this as an elected position, and I will, like other politicians, go out into the community, into the district, speak with the stakeholders, hear them, and be a voice for them on the governing board when policies and discussions are taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Now, DEANNA, you have 1 minute to respond.
Well, in response to that, I will say oftentimes what you see on the dais is the result of a lot of hard work and questions that have been asked in the background. And teachers contact us continuously through email and voicemail. And being a past employee and teacher in the district, I have a lot of resources and I have a definite finger on the pulse of what's going on. So don't be misled by the fact that questions are not being asked that night. They have already been asked and answered and put forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, our next question is, what will you do to make sure employees are included directly in decision-making? Scott, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. That's a great question. And it sounds like the kind of question I get asked all the time. One of the things that we do in the Amphitheater District is when it comes time to policy and compensation, we have a meet and confer process. And I know that that meet and confer process is not perfect. It can be improved, but it is a way that we can have teacher, both classified and certified representation in policy decisions as well as salary decisions. I would like to see that that particular process opened up so that we have a more diverse group of representatives, and I'd like to be able to see, I would hope that we would have more classified personnel. In addition to salaries, I think one of the most important things that we can do for employees of our school district is to allow them opportunities to be in leadership roles. I alluded to the importance of curriculum development, letting teachers be the experts in their field, letting them work along with others to make decisions about the best texts, for example, in order to teach their subject area. I think that another way to involve employees in decision-making is to give them opportunities to work with their colleagues in support roles, mentoring new teachers, for example, all areas that we are currently doing, but can still improve and continue to look for other ways to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Nathan, you have 1 minute.
So I believe that we need to move beyond meet and confer. Meet and confer is incredibly important. It's when it's one of the few times that our employees have a chance to really have their voices heard in a very important way. However, we need to open up more lines of communication, vertical and horizontal. And what I mean by that is horizontal between schools so that our educators can learn from each other, and vertical so that our teachers and our employees don't have to just go through their supervisor up to the superintendent. We should have multiple lines of communication. I have found that in my personal experience that has worked out best. Speaking with educators throughout the district, they feel this would be good too. Mr. Baker mentions salaries, and he mentions ways to improve salaries. I know one important way is simply to fall in line with the rest of Arizona and to adopt a salary schedule or a point system like every other school district in the state has. That would provide exceptional amounts of transparency for our employees.
Thank you, Nathan. And now DeAnna.
Well, yes, I'm a little confused about the salary schedule statement because in 2018, in Meet and Confer, our union asked us to do away with the salary schedule. And because in fact, sometimes the state didn't give us enough money to meet that schedule. And it's also my understanding that not most school districts in the state do have a salary schedule. I know of only 2 in the Tucson area that actually have one in specifically. So I agree that certainly things could be improved in that area so that there is more communication or maybe more openness. But we were actually asked to do away with the salary schedule in 2018 by the union.
Thank you, DeAnna. Scott, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, I was going to point out that some school districts have salary schedules, some do not. It was a joint decision by educators in our district on the Meet and Confer team, as well as the administrators on the Meet and Confer team to move away from a more standard salary schedule. I think it's important to know, even though we can improve our Meet and Confer, that not all school districts in Pima County do in fact bring their certified and classified employees to the table when making those decisions.
Thank you very much.
Personally.
Now, our next question is going to start with Nathan, and this is the question. What will you do to lobby the state legislature to get more funding? And be specific.
Thank you. I would like to address one point of misinformation that my opponents did mention. They mentioned, Mrs. Day mentioned that not many other school districts in Tucson have a salary schedule or point system. Catfoot does, Vale does, TUSD does, Flowing Well does, Sunnyside does. Every other school district in the Tucson area does. Most districts that I've been able to find in the state do as well. Amphi is strange when it comes to having a system that is completely does not have transparency. In terms of specifically lobbying the state legislature, I can do that as a private citizen, as I have done in the past, through conversations with individuals. I believe that is the best way to look forward. Amphi is voters of Amphi are represented by 3 districts. Actually, I believe it might be 4 districts. LD9 and LD11 take up the majority, but in the South, we do have pockets of LD10 and a very sliver of LD3. Regardless of who wins this November in those districts, I will speak with all 12 state legislatures, 8 representatives, 4 state senators, to have them understand ways that we can improve public education in this school. I know currently there is a block in the state legislature that is not in favor of providing much more in terms of education funding. I believe that one thing that we can do is speak to them about specific ways that are going to be lower cost than across the board to help our students. For example, providing increased funding for our special education students. Many parents and students jump between school to school to school, trying to find the proper education that they can have for their child with special education needs. That is detrimental to the student. I believe that a small amount of funding could bring us to a place where our students no longer have to do that and they can stay at their public school. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. DEANNA, you have 1 minute.
Okay, Nathan, maybe our point of misunderstanding is here the difference between a salary schedule and a point system, because I'm not familiar per se with the point system. The lobbying situation, yes. I was a lobbyist for 10 years ago for Amphitheater School District as a teacher, and it's can be a very frustrating situation, but it's a very essential one. And I think we all need to be trained. You don't actually have to go up there, but as Nathan said, as a public individual, to keep the pressure on that we need more funding for public education. The other thing, as Nathan pointed out, and that is with the special education, I think our legislators need to look where some of the money is going to some schools that don't really even service public education. Special education students, and yet they have a funding stream from our state. So I think that's definitely an area where we could look into. Thank you.
Thank you, DEANNA. And Scott.
With regards to literally lobbying, I chose not to be registered as a lobbyist in the state of Arizona. But if the question were a more broad question about how do you get decision makers and policy makers to support public education, one of the things that we can do, of course, as school board members is just be good stewards of fiscal responsibility for our school districts. And I do think the Amphi district does that. I regularly in the fall attend the Arizona School Board Association meeting where we vote for the lobbying. They are our lobbying board, and we make the decisions on what we're asking them to lobby us for. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Now, Nathan, you have 1 minute to respond.
So I'd just like to clarify with Mrs. Day, because I believe that there's just a...
That's Miss Day, thanks.
I apologize, ma'am, Miss Day. What I mean is in Amphi, the current funding system is that there is a band. There is a lower and a maximum limit, and this is for salaried and wage employees. Now, what that means is that our employees do not know how that they can move up. What this also means is that we don't know if salaries are correlated with education experience, as they are in most. A point system is, when I say a salary schedule, like the other schools in the district have, or in Tucson have, most don't have point systems down here. But it means that, and Mr. Baker knows this because he's in Cat Foot, every year there is a guaranteed pay increase. In TUSD, it's $500 a year per year of experience. In Cat Foot, it's $900. What that does is that ensures that our employees get at least some increase every year, as opposed to now where that is not guaranteed.
Thank you, Nathan. And now for our next question, we'll be starting with DEANNA. The question is, the Amphi School District has a very diverse population. What can the governing board do to assure that all students are treated with the same respect and given the same opportunities as their peers? DEANNA, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, well, this is a huge one, and even before the pandemic, but the pandemic has really only exacerbated and brought forward. But yes, and it's the digital divide as well. And we have at this point bought 4,000 Chromebooks, which are some of them held up, and 1,200 cameras, and so to form that. We're trying to get hotspots put in areas to help with internet access in some of our poorer areas, and so forth and so on. Poverty, we all know, is a connection to lower achievement. And so we need to work even more diligently now, because we know from research that our students are going to be behind in reading and math, etc. And the social and emotional learning aspects also will need to be brought forward in a big way at this point. So I think that divide and the Gear Up grant that Mr. Baker mentioned already, we have AVID in our schools that help with kids going on to college. So I think we're working on that and doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, DEANNA. And now, Scott, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, it's always been important to address equity issues within a school district, and Amphi is very diverse. As Ms. Day said, there is no question that the last 2.5 months of school conducted from home, it showed us how difficult it can be for some of our students to successfully access the curriculum. And as Ms. Day has already said, we worked hard to increase the number of Chromebooks that we had, increase the number of cameras that we had, and increase the opportunity for families that did not have good internet access to be able to access the internet. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Nathan.
Thank you. So the diversity of Amphi is something that I really think makes Amphi so incredibly unique. When I was in CDO, one of the things that I didn't appreciate until I went to college and spoke with other people is that most people don't see that diversity in a lot of school districts. I had a friend whose both parents were doctors, lived up in the foothills. I had friends who lived up in Oracle and whose parent and whose came from a single income household where the dad was a mechanic. That diversity is incredibly important. Speaking very quickly about one of the issues that we see in the Amphi half, in the part of the district that feeds into Amphi High, there's a high student mobility rate. One of the things that includes are students who are in homes that get evicted. I believe that working as an individual and working with my colleagues on the school board when I am elected, we should work with the constables to ensure that students' education is not affected by evictions.
Thank you, Nathan. DEANNA, you have 1 minute to respond.
And Nathan, you're so right about that mobility rate down in that. When I was a teacher at Amphi Middle School, and I also agree with you that middle school ones are the best. That was what we had, was the complete, every 3 months or so, kids would move in, they go to Flowing Wells Junior High, or they might come from Doolin. And so that is really a very serious issue, which I agree with you, we certainly need to continue to look at.
Thank you. Now our next question. Something that is on many people's mind now, of course, is the coronavirus. My understanding is that Amphi's coronavirus policy will allow families to choose between in-person learning and online by request. Who is ultimately responsible for making that decision that reopening is going to be safe? And it's on your website that it's going to be done when that decision is made, when it's safe. So who makes that decision? Scott, would you answer that, please?
Yeah, thank you. Probably nothing is going to define this school year and possibly school years in the future more than the COVID-19 pandemic. And certainly with the amount of energy as a school board member, there's never been an issue in the 3.5 years that I've been on the board that has been this difficult to deal with so many constituents looking at this completely differently. One of the decisions that the Amphi board made that I think was spot on was to agree to not open our schools to live instruction until the metrics in Pima County indicate that it's safe. And we actually made that decision before those metrics were released and well before the state of Arizona released its metrics. We changed the decision that we had previously made because we heard the concern of so many employees. Initially, we were asking employees to come and work from the site, even if they were teaching remotely, with the idea behind that, trying to make school as close to what it had been in the past, so that our students would be successful. But hearing from so many teachers worried about themselves, worried about their family members, worrying about their own children, we made it much easier for people to work from home remotely. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan, you have 1 minute.
So addressing what Mr. Baker said, or Dr. Baker said there about the early decision, one aspect of the early decision that I find really frustrating was the difference that the governing board made in the decision in regards to difference between teachers, certified class staff, and classified staff. Namely, classified staff were told they could not bring their kids to work with them as a form of childcare. Certified staff were told that they were allowed to. Again, classified staff sometimes making less than $15 an hour, told they'd have to find their own childcare. And I think that that is a fundamental issue of lack of communication and lack of outreach to those key members of the Amphi community. The Pima County Health Department ultimately, I think, and I believe this is the district's decision, should be the ones making that decision. However, what we need to have in place, clear and transparent plans for when closures are going to happen. And they will happen. Schools will close down because we will have small outbreaks. But what we need to make sure is that our community has full confidence that we will not remain open if it is not safe.
Thank you, Nathan. DEANNA.
I totally agree with all of that. And Dr. Baker has actually stated the Amphi School Board and district position. I will just say that I think it's a sign of a very healthy school board when you can reverse your decision based on new incoming information. And that was definitely something we listened to from our community and our constituents and our teachers. Thanks.
Thank you. Scott, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, this pandemic and being a school leader in the pandemic, as well as being a teacher, it's like the saying, flying an airplane while at the same time building it, and that's what it feels like. We will make decisions on the best evidence that we have at the time, and it is very infrequently that we come back a week or 2 weeks later and there hasn't been some major change, some major edict from the state level as to what needs to happen. I think one of the reasons, and frankly, I I accept Mr. Davis's criticism. One of the decisions with certified staff is that generally, we were talking about certified staff that had their own classroom, they had their own place for their students to be. And we realized that the reality is that many of the classified staff don't have those kind of locations that are separate from the rest of the school. Groundskeepers, for example, people, mechanics, bus drivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the next question is also about the coronavirus. There is a concern that online learning may broaden the achievement gaps between low income and higher income students. How can the governing board assure that all of its students have the equipment, the internet connection, and the support they need to take their classes online? We'll start with Nathan.
First, I think that one of the things that should have happened early on, and this is something that I was saying back in the spring in April and May, is that what we needed to do was listen to the teachers. In fourth quarter, every Amphi employee became an expert in Zoom and became an expert in how to teach online. And we really should have utilized that. Every teacher I spoke with, not a single one said that they were reached out to at a district level to come up with best practices at their site or at the district. Our educators, our employees are our greatest resource, and we must utilize them. We must include them. In terms of the gaps, I teach at a low-income school. 96% of my students are free and reduced lunch. So much so that every student at my camp at my school receives a free lunch. I see this every day when I teach. I viscerally understand this. I think the district has done a good job when it comes to purchasing technology. I believe that we're at one-to-one technology now, and that's fantastic. One thing that I would like to see going forward is the district start relying on teachers more, especially as we come up to the breaks and as we have more experience with online learning. I think that right now we're seeing things done haphazardly in groups like I'm doing with my colleagues, where we're coming up with best practices ourselves. I think that the district needs to start doing this at a larger level. And ultimately, I think that, and this is something that I will do as a member of the governing board, our teachers and our staff need to be heard, because they're the ones who are going to tell us, this is how we close the gap. This is how we ensure that our students do not fall behind in this very trying time.
Thank you. And next, DEANNA, you have 1 minute.
Yes, it is definitely a trying time. And I do need to, one thing that I forgot to mention before was the fact that the district has looked out to partnerships to help with that digital divide that we had in our southern end of the district. And we have quite a thing going now with the city of Tucson to facilitate that. I will also say that we did reach out to teachers. Teachers have been included. Also, during the summer, we had an elementary blue ribbon committee and secondary blue ribbon committee, where we had over 365 members of the community and teachers asked to participate. And there were several different committees, but their input definitely was sought after and included in recommendations that came to us in the school board. In the past 2 weeks, when teachers have been working harder than ever, I have heard from our teachers that one of the plans that they came out of this thing is that they've done a good job of balancing the online instruction with the independent student work, so we don't burn our students out sitting them in front of Zoom too long, and so forth and so on. Teachers were also included in curriculum. Thank you.
And Scott, you have 1 minute.
Much of what I'm going to say has already been said, but last spring, when we realized that we were needing to go remote, we took the time to interview all of the households in our school district to find out what their computer and internet needs were. And based on the information that we got, that's one of the reasons that we do have pretty much the one-to-one computer to student situation that that Mr. Davis mentioned, but much of that was because of the foresight of the district and the school board, trying to make sure that when we started in the fall, we had remedied some of the concerns from before. And as Ms. Day said, we've looked for additional partnerships. We are currently partnering with the city of Tucson to help provide internet access to the southern part of our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Nathan, you have 1 minute to respond.
So responding directly to the actual question of lowering the gap between our low income and high income students during this time, and how do we limit the expansion of it. It goes without saying that there will be some increase in that gap. It's unavoidable. What we have to do, though, is mitigate that. One source of mitigation is going to be mental health services, social workers, counselors, etc. This is a trying time for our students. We are going to see manifestations of the trauma next year, and we must be ready for that. As I teach at a school with a high rate of trauma, and when I first went there, I did not have enough training. I eventually sought it out and I received it, but we need to be helping our teachers now to get ready so that they can, be amazing at the start of the next school year.
Thank you, Nathan. Now, the next question is, what will you do to improve graduation rates? We'll start with DEANNA. You have 2 minutes.
Our graduation rates, that we currently exceed the state level on graduation rates, but I think it was Dr. Baker who said we're always looking to improve that. And as Dr. Baker also mentioned, the Gear Up grant, which was a competitive grant that we received, will also help in that endeavor. It's in the Amphi High School feeder pattern, and will focus on higher graduation rates, enrollment in secondary learning institutions, and so forth. I would also say that in like the last 3 or 4 years, we had, I believe it was our Title I high school, Amphi High School, and they have increased their scholastic awards by over 1,000%, because attention was put onto it, and people would say, oh, you can't do this. And there are actually scholarships available for very, very strange things. And we have worked with our counselors and teachers and administrators to facilitate the opportunities that are out there for students, but they have to graduate. So that's a big incentive. Thank you.
Thank you, DEANNA. Scott, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, as Ms. Day said, our graduation rates exceed the state. We're always looking to improve them. And one of the concerns the board had, it's a previous board member, I believe, was specifically got this moving, but she had concerns with the graduation rate in Amphi, and we focused on improving that graduation rate, and we have improved it. As Ms. Day said, in addition to that, we want to provide opportunities after students have graduated. So if they are interested in post-secondary education, that they can be supported in that way. And during the last 3 years, we have, as mentioned, 1,000-fold increase in the number of scholarships dollars given to students coming from that particular school. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Nathan.
Thank you. So this goes back to that gap that we're talking about. Amphi or CDO and Ironwood have excellent graduation rates. When we're talking about there, we're talking about just a handful of students really that we need to keep targeting. Amphi is where the real issue comes in. And I see 2 paths forward for this with our limited resources currently, hopefully with expanded resources after the Invest in Education Act is passed. First, we have to invest in elementary education, especially K-3. Gaps that we see begin early on in education are magnified later on. We must ensure that our students are capable readers, are capable mathematicians, and have a well-rounded education, including in the arts, very early on. I think we should also look at expanding any preschool programs heavily into the Amphi High region. Next is the other end, which is targeting our high schoolers, giving them a reason to graduate. I think this comes down multiple ways. Our college-bound students, we need to make sure that they see a path for themselves collegiately, and our non-college-bound students, they need to see a path to a job right out of high school.
Thank you, Nathan. Deanna, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yes, and we do strengthen quite a bit in the elementary schools, and our 2 overrides that we successfully passed last year. One of them gave free all-day kindergarten throughout the district, and the other one was a K-3 initiative to put the emphasis in there, because we do know that that's where the groundwork for reading, writing, and math and all that happens. And we do have several preschools. There's a very good one down at Holloway. And so, yes, we do focus in those areas. I will also say on the high school end that we have the Amphi Academy, which oftentimes helps those students. And I happen to say I had a personal situation with this one where a student was not on the path to graduation. We're not looking for tertiary education, and our Amphi Academy pulled them out, and they are proud graduates now of our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this is going to be our last question. Not every student wants to go to college. Do you think it's important to promote vocational education opportunities throughout primary, middle, and high schools? And how effective do you think Amphi has been in providing vocational education opportunities, and what more could be done? Scott, you'll begin. 2 minutes.
Yes, I think it is very important that we provide vocational opportunities for students. I think we need to make sure that we have a curriculum that that doesn't move students into a certain path where they don't have the opportunity to choose college if they'd like to, a path at a young age where they won't have that. But definitely, we need to continuing our funding and our partnership, so that, for example, we have a wonderful building off of Wetmore where students can learn veterinary skills, where they can learn cosmetic skills, and those are the ones that are just coming to me from the last time that I spent time going through there. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Nathan, you have 1 minute.
I agree we don't want to put our students in a path early on. However, here's the solution to that. We can have vocational classes that integrate traditional learning. We can have vocational classes that incorporate English language learning. We can have, things like carpentry, for example, things that come off the top of my head, easy to do math in there with geometry. Any kind of culinary education is excellent for fractions. So what we can do is that we can broaden our students' understanding of what their future could be, and also broaden their understanding of the purpose of school. Show them that their education is not just if they're going to go to college, that their education is going to be applied for the rest of their lives. Really show them that no matter what their path to success is, that they will be a lifelong learner. And that is the goal of every single teacher, to create lifelong learners. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Deanna.
Right, and I think we all know this, and it's, what do they say, college and career ready. And I think that states it all. The student that I was referring to when last I spoke, they're not interested in, at this time, in going to the university or something like that, but they are career ready, and they're quite happy in their chosen path at this point. I will say the question of, have we done enough to let our students know? I think probably this is one thing we do better in the southern end of the district than we do in the northern end of the district, because the student that I'm referring to went to one of our northern high schools and had sort of no idea of the availability of some of the CTE classes. So I find that a little appalling, and we're on that, like, what happened here, because it is a phenomenal resource and one that we should all be encouraging.
Thank you, Deanna. Scott, you have 1 minute to respond.
I agree with Ms. Day that we have done a better job in our school district of providing those opportunities for students that are in the southern part of the district, and we would best serve our students at CDO and Ironwood Ridge if they were more aware of those opportunities and we were able to provide more of those opportunities on site. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And now each of the candidates will have 1 minute to make a closing statement. And we're going to go in the opposite order than with the opening statement. DeAnna Day, would you please proceed?
Well, again, as I reiterated before, I am a student, teacher, community advocate with a passion for public education, who would like to continue with the good things that we are doing, with always a reflective look on what we could do better. And I encourage you to vote for me in November. Thank you.
Thank you, DeAnna. And Nathan Davis.
Thank you. I'd like to really thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us. This is fantastic. Our school board elections are our most local form of government. And it is critical that our voters know how important this race is. I want to reiterate, I'm running to support the Amphi family. And when I mean that, I mean everyone. I mean the community. I mean the students, the teachers, the maintenance workers, everyone who calls Amphi home, whether they actually live in the district or they work for the district. I want to bring transparency to this. I want to make it so that when someone walks into the school board, like I did 2 years ago, and sees what's going on there, that they understand that what things that are happening. I want them to look up on the dais and see someone who represents them. If you want that kind of representations, please go to nathandavisaz.com, follow me on Facebook, and I will work for you when you elect me. Thank you.
Thank you. And Scott Baker, please.
Being able to see the decisions a governing board is asked to make from multiple perspectives is more important now than it ever has been. And as a school board member and school board candidate, I bring a unique set of 3 different lenses. I have the lens of an educator, somebody who knows what it's like to be impacted by the decisions that a governing board member makes. I have the lens of a parent who had 3 children with very different needs attending Amphi Public Schools, and the kinds of decisions that are made that impact parents. And finally, I have the lens of experience. And I think if there's ever a time when experience is going to be helpful in this role, it is this coming year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson in this forum. And thank you, candidates, for sharing your thoughts and opinions with the audience participants. I'm sure they learned very much. You can view a recording of this forum on the Facebook page for the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson. Now, remember to vote. The general election is on November 3rd. About 80% of us get our ballots in the mail, so be sure to get those ballots back into the mail so they can get to the recorder's office on time, get them in early, or hand deliver them at the polls on election day. If you don't vote by mail, go to the polls and vote on November 3rd. Please go to our league website at lwvtucson.org. You will find that we have more candidate forums scheduled: the county recorder, sheriff, and board of supervisors. This is Vivian Hart for the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson. Goodbye.